Welcome to another episode of Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast. I'm Stephanie Ricca, as always, here with STR's Isaac Collazo and CoStar's Jan Freitag. Guys, it is May as we are recording this, end of May, the kickoff to unofficial start of summer, Memorial Day weekend. I know we're going to be unpacking some current and potentially future summer trends this episode. So welcome. Hi, how you doing?
Hey, howdy, Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie. Thanks for having us back.
I thought I'd do a little Texan howdy today, feeling nostalgic, feeling like I need to be home.
Feeling a little bit summerish, a little summer in your step?
I am so ready for summer. Yes, glad it's here.
Well, before we look forward into summer, Isaac, I want to start with you and give us some April highlights, what we're seeing now into the second quarter of the year to date. So cast your memory back to the ending of spring a little bit.
Yeah, and again, now to be on the serious side, yeah, April was really strong, but I think with RevPAR rising for the whole industry by 2%. But don't get, overly excited about that, right? Because in March, it was down by 2%. And the reason we saw the increase and decrease in March and April, a lot had to do with the Easter shift. And we keep forgetting about that. So the way I've been looking at the data is really looking at it 2 months combined. And when you put the 2 months combined, RevPAR was down 0.1%. And so that's a deceleration from February and January. And I think you've got to keep that in mind. The good news, if there's good news, is the decline in sold rooms wasn't as significant as we saw in January, February. So it was only down 0.1%. So again, it's really something just to keep in mind that, yes, it's a better number for April, but again, it had to do mostly with the Easter shift. The other thing that concerned me with the data was the continued deceleration in ADR. So the 2 months combined, 2 months of ending in April, ADR only increased by 0.6%. So that's well below the rate of inflation, right? I mean, that inflation's running at 3.4, 3.5, if I remember correctly. So I think that's another concerning point. Looking at year to date, what concerns me is RevPAR is only up 0.5%. And why it concerns me, that is the lowest April year-to-date RevPAR growth in a non-recessionary period that we've ever recorded. Obviously, during COVID and during recessions, RevPAR has been negative. But most times, the lowest RevPAR we've ever seen in this industry in a non-recessionary period was actually back in 2019, when April year-to-date RevPAR was at 1.1%. And again, this year it's at 0.5%. So, we talked about Steph and Jan, you can chime in here. I'm getting a little bit of summertime sadness here. And so I'm getting a little worried about what's happening as we get into the summer season.
But what we talked about last time holds true for the year-to-date data. Of course, the national data tells you a certain story, but you should immediately unlayer this, unwrap this, and look at the upper end of the market versus the lower end of the market, because I think we are seeing two very different storylines play out. Isaac, do you want to talk a little bit about, tell me more about the high and the low end?
Yeah, it's that bifurcation, and that word keeps coming up because truly the industry is bifurcated at this point. So if you look at the 2 months ending in April by chain scale, the only chain scales that saw growth in that period were upper upscale and upscale, where RevPAR grew by 1.3 and 1.2% respectively. Oddly enough, luxury was actually down, but what's interesting about luxury is occupancy was way up. It was up by 3.2%, but ADR came down by 4.2%. So it was again, you had a impact there. Okay, luxury is interesting, and Jan and I have been discussing this. Luxury has a lot of things going on. In fact, we've seen not only the opening, we've seen a good number of openings in that segment this year, including the Lowe's and Arlington, which was a big hotel. I think it's 888 rooms, and there's another big hotel at Conrad in it was a Conrad. I can't remember. I think it was 400 rooms. And again, that's also impacting. So you have exits, and then you also have several big hotels that exited, and then you have new entrants into the luxury segment. So it's something that we're still looking into. We may have to do some comparable hotels to see truly how luxury is doing. because there's a lot of movement in there. The other thing, again, going back to the original question that Jan asked, is when you look at economy and mid-scale, they continue to fall even in the 2-month period. So economy was down in terms of RevPAR 5.2%, and that was evenly split with decreases in occupancy and ADR. The good news is that mid-scale was down much less at 1.5% in terms of RevPAR, and then upper mid-scale is flat. And again, we keep pointing that out, and I still believe there's a economic component to all this, and I believe it's the type of traveler, especially lower income and upper and somewhat middle income, not upper income, but middle income, where they're just being squeezed out of travel because of the high cost of living. And again, you have inflation, you've had inflation for some time, and that's leading to higher credit card debt, which is also leading to high service costs for that debt. So I think that's kind of why we're seeing the bifurcation, and that's a story I think we'll continue to talk about for some time to come.
Yeah, I think for the lower income traveler, you have to look at the sort of the bucket that makes up everything that they buy, all the services, all the goods. And there are things you have to have, like car insurance, and things you like to have, like a weekend trip. And if you look at the costs for goods and the service, for example, car insurance or car maintenance, all those things have just skyrocketed arguably over the last year or so. And I think then people will look at their checkbook and say, oh, I have these expenses I really can't live without. And the weekend trip, well, maybe I put that off.
And again, this weekend will be our first indication if what we've been thinking about on this economic front is actually playing out, right? Because oddly enough, AAA predicts the biggest Memorial Day weekend ever, right? And so that kind of like, what? And yet the other thing that I keep thinking about is airlines. I mean, I look at the screening data. I can't think of the company, the group, but
TSA.
the screening, TSA. God, I couldn't think of that. And it's been going up. But again, that's a different type of traveler. That traveler tends to be a higher income traveler, or they're using other people's money to go to conferences and things. And we cannot forget that OPM is a big driver of our industry, especially with conference season really in high gear. So again, I do believe you have to look at this industry less so on an aggregated basis for the total industry and almost chain scale by chain scale, because it's going to become even more important as we go through the summer to keep watch on that. And I should have added one last thing. If you look at year to date for the chain scales, the only 2 chain scales that are positive, again, are upper upscale and upscale. And they're positive by not a lot, by 2.7% for upper upscale, and then by 1.2% for upscale. So there's growth, but again, that is really low growth. And so again, that's why the summertime sadness is setting in for me.
So April showers didn't bring May flowers?
Well, it did. If you just look at that 1 month without considering March, you would have said this is good. But yeah, it's and at 2%, again, good is all relative. Is 2% good, right? So
when Isaac talking about OPM, he's talking about other people's money. So we are using somebody else's credit card. I think the AAA data set, I always find a little bit interesting, because obviously just because you're on the road does not necessarily mean that you will be sleeping in a hotel, right? A lot of people are doing family trips. The kickoff of the summer is to go see the in-laws, go see the grandparents, and you probably going to stay over at their place. But overall, I think it's a positive indicator of people wanting to travel. The question is just where they're spending their money.
Correct. And I do that. I agree with. I mean, travel is really ingrained in us, and we all want to see friends and family. But yes, it may not involve a hotel. That's very true. It may involve either friends and family, or it could also be some alternative accommodation. And that's something to keep watching as well.
I was at a conference yesterday in Miami, and not surprisingly, the topic of cruises came up, as an alternative accommodation, because the total cost of travel there is just one number, and everything is taken care of, right? Including all your food and beverage, all your entertainment, all your amenities. And I wonder if on the margins, we are seeing some travelers who stayed away from cruises, obviously, over the last 3 or 4 years, who are now much more comfortable going back on cruises.
Right. And I 100% agree with that. So I think we not only are we people being squeezed, but then because of that squeeze, they're thinking of new other ways. They're not giving up travel. They just have to think differently and how to minimize the cost at some point.
I want to ask you both a follow up question on this a little bit more before we move on to our next segment. We've talked about it for the last couple months, like you talk about that squeeze, the pressure that particularly travelers who might be choosing lower end type of hotels are feeling because of inflation, higher cost of living. At what point do we see that squeeze rise up the chain scale and the traveler type? Because I think that squeeze can mean different things even to more high income travelers who might be trading down or moving to different levels. How do you see that play out?
Welcome to my nightmare. So that's what I'm going to say. So this has been my nightmare because, again, as for those of you that watch us and listen to what we do, we're about to release our forecast in 2 weeks, a revised forecast at NYU, at the NYU Investment Conference. And that's what we've been debating. At what point does that end? And Stephanie and Jan, Jan's heard me cry on his shoulder multiple times. I just don't see it. I see it. What is it economically that will change their position? In past, when we've seen downturns in the past, it's a recession. Everyone goes back up when jobs reopen and, money starts flowing again, right? Well, this time we don't have a recession. In fact, GDP is predicted to be exactly the same it was last year, about 2.6% growth year over year, and job market's growing. And yet we have a portion of our population and then our industry that are hurting. What's going to change? There's no stimulus money out there, and your credit card debt is high. You need a windfall of some kind to pay that off. So your servicing costs will continue to rise. So yeah, it's the first time that I feel pessimistic because I am an optimist and everyone knows I'm an optimist. And then now my rose-colored glasses I guess they're turning dark. I don't know, Steph. It's a really hard question. And that's what I asked during our forecast meetings. What will it take to change that dynamic on the lower end, especially the lower income side? And I have no idea.
But let's go back. I think Stephanie's question was more geared towards, could this creep up towards the upper end? And there, my perspective is nope. Because the wealth effect is real. The stock market continues to go up. Your house is worth much more than it was a year ago, than it was 5 years ago. People just feel wealthier on the upper end. And also you have this idea of OPM, right? Corporate transient demand continues. Group demand, we're still very, very bullish on. I was at 2 separate conferences this week, and they were well attended. The airports in Minneapolis and Miami were very, very busy. Now, Minneapolis was probably already preloading people who scooted out for Memorial Day weekend. But the point is, conference circuit seems to be doing quite well. I had sidebar conversations with people who ran large casino resorts in Las Vegas, and their rose-colored glasses are rose-colored, I can tell you that. They have very, very good attendance on the books. So I think on the upper end, I'm still quite bullish. But this just cements this idea that Isaac keeps talking about the bifurcation.
Yeah, and again, I am bullish on the upper end as well. So sorry, I should have added that. Again, where I think we see the continuing erosion, if you want to call that, maybe in upper mid-scale, right? So as this continues, you might see a little bit more in the upper mid-scale, but you're right, upper upscale, a lot of that is OPM, and a lot of that is conference-driven, and a lot of that's still business transient. So that should be in a good position for the remainder of the year.
Let's move into diving into a couple more specific topics here. Now, Jan, I know that you want to talk today a little bit about extended stay. Talk about a segment that has been in everybody's sights for a while. It's been an industry darling for some time from developer and operator perspective. How are things shifting in this segment, in your opinion?
Yeah, thanks, Steph. So I wrote a short article for Hotel News Now on this, and the impetus was really just to say, okay, if there is bifurcation in the market, how is the extended stay sector doing, just to call it out specifically, because it was such an industry darling, and we're seeing so many brands being added to the stable of extended stay brands. So I went back to the deep, dark hours of when the industry was not doing well. Remember or don't remember, April 2020, US hotels sold 24% of their rooms, the worst occupancy that we've ever recorded. Hopefully, we'll never have to record that again. But in that specific month, the lower end saw an occupancy of 54%, the lower end extended stay, and the higher end, and this is true, had an occupancy of 70%. So in an environment when there arguably was no demand, the higher end extended stay properties sold 7 out of 10 rooms. An amazing performance. Of course, we kept broadcasting that number, and a lot of people said, oh, if it's not recession proof, that seems recession resistant. So let's lean into this. So I looked at the data more lately, and well, unfortunately, the growth rates that we had seen have come off a little bit. So for the lower end extended stay, the room demand change, the year ending in April, is up 0.3%, which, okay, there's a little bit of growth, but you have to overlay here supply growth of over 3%. And this feeds exactly into the narrative that a lot of people wanted to be part of this, which means more new supply. We saw a lot more new brands. But of course, things eventually have to normalize, and we are right in the demand normalization right now. And just for context, on the lower end, annualized room demand up 1.1%, supply up 2.6%. So that just gives you a sense of this misalignment between supply growth and demand growth, which I think we all sort of thought it would eventually happen. Well, we are there indeed. And so for me, what's really interesting to watch going forward is we have all these new brands that are coming into the market. All the big parent companies are saying, oh, the owners want it, banks want it, lenders want it. Let's just add a couple of more brands to our stable, extended stay brands to our stable. And it's going to be super interesting to see as occupancy softens, especially on the lower end, what will hotel owners do? Because if you used to if you are, an owner of a bunch of other limited service hotels and you're used to selling rooms by the night, what happens if you have an extended stay product where you're supposed to not take a customer who only comes in one night, but somebody who comes in 7 or 10 or 14 or 30 days? And so that's, to me, is very, very interesting to see, will the owners of the new extended stay products have the discipline to say no to guests who only want to come in one night? Because if they don't, then the labor model breaks, and then the GOP model breaks. So that's sort of what I'm thinking about right now, and what I'm sort of watching this summer into the fall.
And I'm wondering, Jan, this just came in my head, and you probably have the data because I haven't looked at it, even though I have access to the data. Could some of the leakage or the demand leakage in extended stay be linked to less home sales? Because I started thinking about that, going, right now home sales are starting to slow, right? Normally you sell your home and then you might have to move in someplace if your other house wasn't ready. I wonder if that's part of it too, that I never thought about. And is that a longer term trend as we see the dampening in home sale volume? Is that going to put further pressure on extended stay? And this is just an idea that popped in my head. So
I think to take what you're saying and broaden it out a little bit, there were a lot of customers in the extended stay segment that weren't normally customers in the extended stay segment, right? People who said, oh, I can work from anywhere. Oh, school is on Zoom. Let's just extend our summer vacation in 2020. Let's extend our summer vacation in 2021 and stay somewhere for much, much longer periods of time. I think you have the people you just brought up, certainly that could have helped us with the occupancies, but some of this is falling by the wayside.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Yeah, it is. It's a very interesting, because I've also looked at it. The good news is even in the economy segment, and you look at economy extended stay still has done held up better, if that's the right way to say it, than the economy overall. So while it's still falling, it's not falling as much as economy traditional hotels. So there is still some, benefit for extended stay hotels. They're still, again, holding up better in a period of declining demand.
But the new supply story, I think,
Right.
really matters here. We
It
don't
does.
talk about new supply a whole lot because we're saying, look, through April, new supply is up
Right.
0.6% for the nation. Okay, moving on, nothing to
Right.
see here. But for extended
Right.
stay, new supply matters.
100%
And consider that gestation period, right? When it, like you mentioned, Jan, April 2020, economy extended stay emerged as that darling. And then, oh, lo and behold, 4 years later, here's more demand. A lot of those brands are new build. I will say, too, at least the brand thesis for many of, if not all of these new brands for economy to mid-scale extended stay coming from the big brand companies, they are leaning very hard into that operating model of these are designed to be true extended stay for the long haul, not the transient night. But whether that can happen is absolutely the question, because that you have to be a certain kind of operator with certain knowledge base to make that happen and to go after that business. So that will be very interesting to see how that plays out.
But you got to pay for employees, you got to pay for insurance, and you got to pay the debt. So at some point, you might want to stick to that. But again, people do have to do what they have to do to survive, right? And so it just depends, going back to the original question, how long does the softness in demand last?
All right, Isaac, you're up to unpack your topic of the month. And I know you said earlier that you're an optimist and everybody knows it, but you are having a few existential moments of pessimism lately, aren't you?
I
Tell
am.
us more.
Yeah, what I've been thinking about, and I wrote a little note to Amanda, our president, and she was surprised I used this word. I fear that as an industry, given the economic environment that we're in, I fear we're going into a period of stagnation or stagnant, a stagnant demand and stagnant RevPAR. And again, this bifurcation, it continues to exist. And, we've never had that in terms of the industry. Again, we tend to follow the economy pretty well, GDP, right? So there's always been a relationship between GDP and demand. And now that relationship is somewhat broken. And what I found is it's been broken for a little bit more than we thought. What we did is we mapped out GDP against all the chain scales demand, and the relationship holds well for upper mid-scale, upscale, upper upscale, and including luxury. What was fascinating, it doesn't hold up for mid-scale and economy, where basically, even though GDP was growing, you didn't see growth as in the same growth rate that you did with the economy. And I wonder now, given that again, it's a segment that's it's pretty mature, right? We're starting to see new properties in there, but it's a very mature and again segment because a lot of those properties have been around for a long time. Um, is this going to continue for the foreseeable future? Essentially, what I'm saying is that we'll see the industry have very low RevPAR growth for some time to come. And again, it's that hope being very stagnant. It may be growing, but it's not going to be what we saw in the past. And that's what worries me. And again, it's weird because I've never had to think that way about this industry because there's always been a light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, it's a recession. Oh, it's COVID. It'll come back. I don't see the light, and maybe I'm just getting really dark. And I ran this morning, so I'm trying to get I'm trying to get the demons out of me, but it's not. Those little demons aren't leaving. They keep going.
We've got to bring the light back.
We got to bring the light back.
Shed some
Yeah,
light.
and so it's really weird. It's really weird for me to think that way because I don't think that way normally.
Okay, you just have to run more, Isaac. Just keep running until you feel better.
Exercise the demons.
I think I'm telling you that I sweated so much today. I think I'm gonna wither away.
So one thing, as I like to say, is just math. part of it will be the comps are going to get easier, right? We're not going to keep falling and falling and falling. Well, that is true. We have done that. But I think eventually we're going to hit that plateau where the percent changes are not going to be negative, where the percent changes are either flat or slightly positive. And that's just math. And I think that's in our favor, and I think that hopefully that is going to happen sooner rather than later. We'll see what the forecast says that you're going to put out at NYU. But I think that is a part of it, right?
But Jan, hope is not a strategy. Hoping that the comps get easier doesn't make forecasting say, oh, it's going to go up because the comps are easier.
But
That's not
trust
hope.
the math,
That's just math. Exactly.
right? I'm going with trust the math.
But I can tell you, because I looked at this as well, economy demand has fallen even further in the past. Not forget COVID, because obviously I'm not looking at those periods, but it could still fall further. And that's it could still fall further. And so we just got to be cognizant about that, because it did fall further in 2003, or I think it was 2003. It could be 2008. I don't remember anymore. So,
I mean, our friends from Truist just put out a super interesting research note. It was specifically about Wyndham Hotels, but their broader point was that the stimulus package, the specifically infrastructure, thank you, for bridges and tunnels, that the spend year to date, or to date, I guess, has only been like 4% or something really, really small, And so that's, I think, what a lot of our friends from the economy sector are leaning into to say, oh, there's going to be more money coming from the government to restore the bridges and tunnels and what have you, and highways. And they think, and I think that's true, that the economy type properties will benefit disproportionately from that.
And that is extended stay.
And that would be the windfall, right? To change the things around that we've been looking for. So I don't discount that, but we've been hearing it for 2 years, and that's why it's hard to put that into a forecast, because you go, okay, we've been talking about that for 2 years, and I know the money has actually been allocated, it just hasn't been utilized, right? So it's out there. And, what is it? What will it take? But yes, we'll watch that very carefully, and we'll amend the forecast when we see that happening.
So to bring things up on a little bit more positive note, I want to ask your opinion on a couple transactions. So that's something that, Jan talks about, trust the math. I like to look at transaction pace picking up, and even if it's just anecdotal, when you see, different types of hotels trading at different dollar amounts, for me, I always look at that 100 million plus mark, and we've seen a couple really interesting landmark deals in the last month or so in your hometowns or adopted hometowns of Nashville. Of course, we saw the One Nashville Embassy Suites package. Just a couple weeks ago, the Arizona Biltmore finally sold. Pretty good numbers there. Unpack that for me. Are they good numbers? Is this a indicator of what's to come? Is this one of those psychological moments where, oh, look, the deal happened, now other people will follow suit? Jan, give us the art and the science.
So 2 comments. Number 1, luxury rules. And the higher end is going to continue to command, get premium prices per room. And I think host hotels here in Nashville said, look, this market still has more runway. This is an arguably A+ location. It is literally across the street from the convention center. And it's an interesting upper upscale meeting space, sort of loyalty point oriented traveler versus the luxury high end, often bachelorette oriented small meeting house. And those both work. On the Arizona Biltmore, clearly international buyer looking to park their money in US dollars in an arguably irreplaceable asset. There are not that many of them. They don't come on the market very often. And clearly they also think there's more room to run in that specific property. So it's not a surprise. I think the prices are sort of for you and me, like, wow, this is real money. But clearly they're only paying this because they think they can get a return on that investment. They think there is more room to run for meeting-oriented, high-end type property. So we expect more of that. Honestly, as the year progresses, I was talking to a broker friend earlier this week, and he said BOV, broker opinion of value, is what keeps them busy. People are saying, what is this worth now? Should I take it to market? And on the high end, clearly the answer is, yep, this is the time to put it on the market.
I 100% agree. And I can see the hotel from my little pad here in Nashville. And so I definitely agree with everything you say. I think luxury is the darling right now. You'll see more transactions there, and even some upper upscale hotels. I think it is because, again, those are just right now the hotels that are performing the best at the moment, and they have a long runway for further growth.
And adding value too, especially to upscale upper up where they think they can capture some of that coming from demand. I think it's interesting. I don't know if either of you have seen the renovation that finished within the last 2 years or so of the Arizona Biltmore. So we all know that, the grand lawn in the middle, which was the meeting place for all of the events that would take place at that hotel. That's where you had your opening night reception. And now they have, they've added new pools and a big circular bar. So I say, what does something like that say about the guests that they are attracting, right? Is it going for more of that leisure or more of that, corporate that wants a central bar area? I don't know. Nobody asked me, but I liked it the old way better. Although I will say that the interior renovation they did to the public spaces there is absolutely gorgeous. Completely biased opinion. That is my favorite hotel in the United States. Wow. Probably shouldn't say that and show favorites, but you know what? It's a podcast. We're going to go out there with it. All right, guys, we are going to close up this episode, but don't worry, I am not letting you go without contributing to our brand new feature that we've been doing for the last couple episodes. It's metaphor time. We've had this new closing element where you each give me a fun metaphor, simile, little anecdote about the current state of hotel industry performance. And I'm going to jog your memories to what you said last month. Jan, last month, you talked about the industry being like a Kinder egg, eating the chocolate last. Isaac, of course, was on the fence whether this year's summer was going to remind him more of Lana Del Rey's Summertime Sadness or the Bleachers roller coaster. So let's give it a start, Isaac. What's your simile metaphor story?
I'm digging deep. So this time,
deep cut.
I'm deep cut looking at ELO, album called Time, 1981. Remember 1981? The world was fresh and new for all of us. We were going to conquer it. We were going to do everything we've always wanted to do. And there's a song on there on that album called Hold On Tight. And that's my metaphor for this summer and for the rest of this year is hold on tight. And essentially it's a long time to be gone. Oh, time just rolls on and on. When you need a shoulder to cry on, when you get so sick of trying, just hold on tight to your dream. And I think we have, as an industry, we have a dream. We know we have great products out there. It's just a matter of holding on tight. We'll get through this.
Man, that is a deep cut. I haven't thought of that song in,
since 1981.
Clearly.
It is one of my favorite. That album. We're gonna sidebar here. That album is one of my favorite albums. It still remains. Of course, I was a big ELO fan, so and I'm gonna try to see ELO in Austin because I happen to be in Austin. I can't see them in Nashville, so I may see them in Austin. But I love that album. It speaks to me. Still to this day.
They're still around, man.
They're still around. Wild. Jeff, and other deep cuts. This is a song I sing to myself when I'm depressed. Is this the way life's meant to be? And that's on that album too. So
I think this is everybody. Wow. While you're listening to the podcast, you can have that album going on in the background.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great album.
Well, Isaac, if you need a shoulder to cry on, call me.
I'll run to your house.
So for me, I was in Miami yesterday for Booking.com's Click conference, and it was sort of funny. I had a weird sort of moment sensation as I walked into the main conference hall area where the main stage was, where I was supposed to present. There are these warning signs that says, warning, haze will be used throughout the day. And I was like, oh, do they know my presentation? Because it is indeed pretty hazy out there. We talk about bifurcation, but maybe the new term we should use for the hotel industry is haze. So I thought that was very fitting, and I just thought I'm going to use that today.
I may have to use that next week. I'm at a conference, so I may have to use that haze.
But Isaac, you can adapt it to hazy shade of summer.
Ooh. Hazy shade. Ooh, nice. I like that. We've got, yes, it's going to be an interesting summer. And I'm going, now I have all these ideas. In 1981, that was Back to the Future. That's when it, oh my God, are we back to the future? I didn't even think about that till just this moment. Oh, man, there's a lot to unpack here.
See? So whether we're going back to the future or heading into a hazy shade of summer, I think the moral of the story is hold on tight, trust the math. As always, thank you both for your insight. Thank you to our listeners. Find the latest global hotel industry news on hotelnewsnow.com. Find this podcast wherever you like to listen, and make sure you follow both these guys on LinkedIn. Thanks, guys.
And look for us at NYU. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Steph.
Thanks, Steph.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast on the Hotel News Now podcast network. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode of Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast, was recorded on May 24, 2024 by me, Stephanie Ricca. The episode was edited by Sean McCracken. Find all hotel industry news at hotelnewsnow.com. Subscribe to this and all Hotel News Now podcasts wherever you like to listen. Just search for Hotel News Now. Thank you.